Welcome to a special episode of Behind the Fence. This is our show about life in the Sierra foothills. We're going to be sitting down with community leaders, hopeful community leaders, local voices, and people who call Mariposa County home. I am your host, Rick Blaylock. If you're enjoying these real conversations with people that help highlight our community, hope that you give us a follow, share it with someone who loves this town as much as I do. Today is the next in our series of conversations with candidates that are running for local office. Like I said before, I've reached out to all the candidates. I'm scheduling interviews as availability allows. I got a day job, so I'm doing the best that we all probably do. We're all busy schedules, so I'm doing the best that I can. Gonna schedule them as we are available, sit down, have a talk, and I'm gonna post it as soon as I can. No order, no priority, no bias, none of that junk. I'm not interested in that. But we're gonna be asking each candidate the same set of questions. I'll also note, just as a disclaimer, that I don't live in District 1. I won't be voting for a candidate in District 1, and I'm not going to endorse a candidate in District 1. That's up for you to decide, and hopefully through these videos, the goal of these videos is to provide that platform for voters to hear directly from candidates, from those running for office, to help increase that visibility. So with that, this is our second conversation in that series, and I'm happy to be here with Adam McLane. Adam, thanks for joining with me. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
It's super fun.
Yeah. It worked out because you run some stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
like 100 feet away.
Yeah, we farm over at Sierra Cider, so we're only maybe just fifth of a mile away. Or
just down the hill. So I appreciate you coming on my lunch break today. We'll start. Can you just share a little bit about your background and how you came here to Mariposa County?
That's a great thing. Yeah, so born and raised in South Bend, Indiana, which is the home of Notre Dame. Went to college in Chicago. I went into Christian ministry out of college. That's what I studied in college, and became a youth pastor first in Northern California, and then we bounced back across the country to the Detroit suburbs. We were there for 5 years. Along the way, I started an online company that got bought by Zondervan, which is a Christian publisher.
Yeah, I know that.
And they moved me to San Diego, where I worked for a company called U Specialties, started all of their podcasting and social media stuff.
I bet like way better equipment than my cell phone, $20 Amazon tripod.
Rupert Murdoch has a bigger budget.
I would assume so.
Yeah. So anyways, we did all that stuff, and then in 2010 started a Christian publisher with a couple of people left that company, started our own Christian publishing and coaching business, ran that for until 2020, and worked for a nonprofit from there until we moved here in 2022. We moved here honestly, for 25 years, my wife followed me around the country to all these jobs that I had working in Christian ministry, and she loved the outdoors. When we lived in San Diego for 15 years, her and our daughter Lily would go off to the mountains pretty much every weekend. And during COVID, she just kind of fell in love with the idea of us moving to the mountains, and that kind of began like a big search of it was kind of a fantasy. We weren't really serious about doing it until one day she found the house that we ended up buying on Zillow. And after a couple months of her staring at the real estate listing and being surprised that it was still available, we came up. She was in love. I saw a look on my wife's face I'd never seen in 25 years. And just as a husband, I was like, well, let's do it. I mean, so we moved up here in April of 2022, and really with no knowledge of Mariposa, beyond. We went to Yosemite every year for like 10 years with our kids. And so that's probably our knowledge of the Oakhurst, Mariposa area was just coming here as visitors and enjoying it. And then we moved in and just jumped in with both feet, and has been a really, it's an interesting transition coming from city life into here. Yeah. And so, we adapted as quick as we could. About a month after we moved here or so was the Oak Fire, which...
welcome to Mariposa.
Well, I mean, it was a known risk, right? Sure. And so some of my background that I got into later in my Christian ministry career was on relief work with Christian organizations. I spent a lot of time in Haiti right after the earthquake. I did a lot of work in a variety of natural disaster situations, as well as I did probably the last 6 years or so before we moved here was doing a lot of work in northern Mexico with both folks that were involved with the migrant caravan. Remember that? It kind of all became political. Sure. But at the end of the day, it was a humanitarian crisis. And so we were a big part of like equipping churches to become like refuge places of refuge. And then we equipped them with the food and everything that they needed. So I did that for 5 or 6 years before moving here. Again, had no idea I was going to get involved in this way, but the Oak Fire happened. My heart broke for those victims. Yeah. The Alliance for Community Transformations opened up a job opportunity to be a fire case manager, and left the Christian organization I was at that time, did that job for about 10 months, walked through the first 10 months with a wide variety of the victims of that fire. And at that point, really got to know Mariposa in a whole different way. Got to see the outpouring of love and affection and support from the community. And also got to see all the frustrations and heartbreak of the victims. And that really, I think, gave us almost like a quote unquote like a master's degree in Mariposa life.
Sure. Yeah.
And so learned really quickly, and along the way, that's when we were starting the farm. And
so for those who don't know, can
Sure.
you share what your organization is that you business, I guess?
Yeah, so we own a small business here in Mariposa County that we started. Started off selling nursery starts. It's called the Farm at Warman Mill. It's named after Dan and Ruby Warman, who were the homesteaders that are on Warman Road. If you're not familiar, as you're leaving the county, the last road before you enter Madera County is Warman Road, and that's named after Dan and Ruby, who homesteaded there from 1910 until about 1977. They didn't have any children, and we felt like a nice way to honor them. And after reaching out to family, friends, or whatever, was to name the farm after them. So that's kind of the background of the name.
I did not know that. Very
It's
cool.
kind of cool. I mean, they were really, really cool people, and the more we learn about them, the more we just want to kind of be like them.
Sure.
So we do nursery starts. We have vegetables that we sell in the community. We sell to schools. We have it's called a community supported agriculture, or CSA. It's a subscription box for vegetables. Right now we're growing on 4 different locations across Mariposa County. The goal is for those to build up each of those locations, hire a farm manager, and then give them that business.
Okay.
So that's the long
Hand
range
that
goal.
off.
Hand that off fully. That would be the desire for us. We're 50. I'm not looking. Our kids don't want to be farmers, and so as much as we love it, we have to think about this being similar to Dan and Ruby, like a 1-generation deal. So we got to always think about that transition of
Gotcha.
if we want this to carry on, if it's a viable business, then they'll have to create an opportunity for somebody else. So
Gotcha. Very cool.
Yeah.
So you've been here for 4 years.
Yep.
What motivated you? Oh, side note.
Yeah.
For the audience, for you, I got an anxious dog. He's just extra anxious today. I sat on the couch last interview. He kind of had to jump up on me. So forgive me if he's being a little extra down there.
That's
he likes your
perfect.
boot. It's
Yeah,
good.
that's fine.
So if
We
you
have
see him,
dogs.
that's why.
We live in Mariposa.
This
We
is
have
Mariposa.
dogs,
Hey,
right?
this is the
You
podcast.
only have one. The average is like 9. So we're good.
He's enough work for 9. That's for sure, aren't you?
Yeah. You're not
Well,
because we're talking about him.
all that being said,
Yes.
want to get back to the important question. Can you tell me, you've been here for 4 years, what motivated you to run?
Why?
Why?
Yeah. So
Why and why now?
Yeah. So some of it is the background. So the why now is also important. So like I mentioned, I worked in Christian ministry basically from 2002 until 2022.
20 years, okay.
So 20 years. I was always involved in community life, right? That was what a part of my training was back in Bible college and seminary, was to get involved in the local community. We were always very sternly told to be apolitical in that in that posture. But I was always involved in school board stuff, especially with our kids, at planning groups and recreation councils and so on and so forth. So I've been really involved. When we were in San Diego, we were part of our the community council. So in San Diego, it's broken up into a bunch of neighborhoods.
Yep.
And each of them has its own little mini government.
Yeah.
And that government, that little mini unofficial government, becomes like a conduit between the real government and the services and stuff that
Like an
people need.
ambassador for that small region.
Correct. Yeah. So I served for a long time. I was a vice president of the Rolando Community Council, and then became the president of the Rolando Community Council. And we represented the 9,000 residents of that neighborhood to the city of San Diego, to our members of Congress, and so on and so forth. So kind of similar to that.
Okay.
So kind of an interesting thing that I think it's important for voters to understand is I did all of that for the 12 or 15 years that we were in San Diego. I was just always a part of that life, with schools and so on and so forth. But when we moved here, my wife said, I really want you for a few years.
Okay.
And so because all of those were unpaid roles, right?
Sure.
So I'm
Yeah.
sitting on all these boards and committees and nonprofit
Night meetings, 7 p.m.
five days a week.
Yeah.
I'm out doing volunteer work for the community council or the rec council or the planning group or so on and so forth, doing homework. So when we moved here, she said, I don't really want you to be on any boards for a while. And so I haven't been involved in that level. At the same time, that Oak Fire job really helped me see some opportunities, I think, that are necessary within the actual board of supervisors from a leadership and a vision perspective, to cast vision for the staff, to cast vision for the community, to really be more focused on the future.
Okay.
One of the things that we love this community. We spend a lot of time talking to people. I spent a lot of time when we moved here in the Mariposa Museum because I just wanted to learn. And we read all the books and all these other things. We want to see Mariposa move forward, but I really feel like we're stuck in a lot of ways, and we're being held back sometimes by, I don't even know what it is. I just think that the culture sometimes is kind of unwilling to let go of the present to see the future.
Okay.
And so that's a lot of the reason that I'm saying so that's the why now. The why now is I've always wanted to do it. So starting in like 2005, 2006, I went to the board of the church I was working at and said, I want to run for the school board.
Yeah.
And they said, if you enter this race, we'll fire you.
Okay, well
that's clear. The timing wasn't right.
Pay the bills.
And then a few times in San Diego, I was approached about running for city council and things like that. But the timing, I was in a business relationship with a business partner who didn't want me to do that.
Sure.
And then at one point, he was actually sick, and I felt like it'd be rude for me to set aside time from the company to run for public office. So I've wanted to do this for a while.
Gotcha.
I didn't move here with the intention to ever do this. And kind of like the irony of it is, like I mentioned, Kristen wanted me out of this stuff, but and this, one of the curriculums that I wrote back in 2011 in the Christian world is called Good News to the Neighborhood. And so we trained people on the skills of ethnography and how to learn your community and to ask not to be too Christian here, but how can we indwell Jesus in our community through our daily lives? Absolutely. And so we taught, when we wrote that curriculum, we had no idea it was going to take off. It became a whole thing. And we started getting all this feedback from churches and youth groups all across the country. And it was kind of funny because I had written the thing with a co-author and a good friend of mine, but I had never really internalized it. It was just a project.
Sure.
But once we started getting all this feedback about what these different churches and youth groups and stuff were doing and indwelling their community, I started asking myself the question of is my life good news in my neighborhood? Okay. And that's really what drove us in San Diego to get super involved with a lot of school issues, like local school issues, within the immigrant communities that's culturally relevant there, across the border in TJ. All those things were in order to be good news in our neighborhood, we had to get to know and trust and build trust with our neighbors and then serve their practical needs.
Gotcha.
And so that's really what's driving me here. That was the same thing with the Oak Fire. And then most recently when the SNAP benefits were suspended, Chris and I looked at each other and we were like, well, what can we do? And what we had in our lives was a farm stand that was pretty much unused at that time of year. And we said, well, let's ask the community to donate stuff. And they did. And it was this amazing, beautiful expression of people from Mariposa and Oakhurst and Coarse Gold coming and donating food, and at pretty much the same rate people who needed food getting it.
They needed
so in a 2-week period, we served 750 people. Wow. Okay. So we look at that kind of stuff and we're like, what more can we do? Yeah. And so that's really what's driving me for the here and now of running for supervisor, is that I want to serve the community. That's what's driving it. Gotcha. And I feel like we're at an opportunity and we have some crossroads as a community to go into some hard spaces and have hard conversations to move us forward and think about the future.
I like it. I'm going to ask kind of a hybrid question then. Sure. So how do you, what are some of the biggest responsibilities you see in the role of county supervisor for District 1? And then specifically what you talked about just now, you mentioned about there could be some stuck culture mindset.
Yep.
I'm curious if you can weave that in, because that probably is, I'm assuming that's probably what some of the responsibilities you see in that role.
Yeah, I mean, the first and primary responsibility I see is to be an ear and a voice for District 1. A lot of people, District 1 covers 624 square miles. Yeah. It's basically the entire eastern half of the county, and it's only 3,500 people, so it's really spread out. And so one of the things that I learned from doing ministry is that it's important to go and be with people. And so instead of me hanging out in the office in town, which is fun, and I like town and I like being there.
Sure.
We want to have office hours around the community, so that an office hours meeting, just basically I'll set up my laptop and hang out and talk to constituents in some of these communities that aren't going to realistically make it to a regular board meeting, right? So it's really hard if you live in Wawona or Fish Camp to get to a meeting, or do it I'll have these evening office hours, so people that are living in Ponderosa Basin, they can come after work and make sure that their voice is heard. I think that's a really important part of that. I'm not saying that they're not currently being heard, but I don't think that there's currently that structure. If that makes sense. Okay.
So when you talk about that stuck, is that part of that structure? Is just kind of there's a way that we've been doing government, or that we've been doing our local stuff?
I want to acknowledge that there's a pretty massive transition happening at the department head level within the county.
Okay.
So over the last few months, I've sat down with a bunch of our department heads, and there's been a lot of transitions, meaning retirement. So there was a lot of people that during COVID, maybe they held on for a few years past when they originally wanted to retire, and those people are rolling out and new people are coming in. But there's also a big technological, so there's that impacts the culture of each of those departments, right? When a new leader comes in. And so that's an interesting thing, and that's starting to settle in an interesting way. There's also a whole new form of government in play right now because now we have a strong county administrator in Joe Lynch.
Okay.
And so now they have a boss to report to on a daily basis as opposed to reporting directly to the board. There's kind of an intermediary level there.
What's different from what that was like 5-10 years ago?
Up until 2 years,
I just didn't know. Yeah.
Up until 2 years ago, there was a county administrator, but it wasn't a strong. It's not what's called a strong county administrator. In other words, the county administrator reported to the board just like the public works director reported to the board of supervisors. So now all of those department heads, minus the district attorney, report directly to Joe Lynch.
So there's a reorg, if you will.
There's a reorg.
There was a reorg that
happened in the last 2 years.
where department heads went to the board. They're now going to the CAO. Now the CAO goes to the
CAO
board.
is like is basically like the day-to-day executive for the county, right? And so that again creates a cultural change in an organization, and that's starting to settle. And then there's some really cool technology things that are happening, particularly in the building and planning world with Tyler Technologies, and that's starting to filter out so that the county can operate in a smooth way. So I do want to acknowledge that. But another primary role of the board, and this is where some of the rub can be, is that when I've been meeting with some of the departments, it's not necessarily clear what the vision for the county is. And so I feel like that's the role of leadership, is to cast that vision and say, this is the kind of community that we want to create, we want to foster, and this is the directions that we want to go and grow. And that'll help that frontline worker at the desk at any department say, now I know what the vision for the community is. I can answer this question knowing what the vision is.
There's a purpose behind the work that I'm doing today because it calls into a higher thing.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that provides a good motivator for a lot of people, not for everybody. People are motivated in different ways. But I think that's part of creating an environment where people understand exactly what it is that they're trying to accomplish on a day-to-day basis. Because when you talk to different people, you get different answers. And so there's not like a unified vision. So that's a process that when I did church consulting, we would sit down with church staffs and we did with a lot of different organizations as well.
You're talking about organizational leadership?
Yes.
There's a great book that somebody wrote. It's called It's Not the Tech.
Hey, you should check it out.
Highly encouraging people to check
Amazon,
it out. That was not a plug. I did that $20. I'm totally kidding. But yes, go ahead. Sorry.
So anyways, I think that's a big part of it, is just providing that leadership and vision in a unified way.
Gotcha.
I tend to work well with others. I'm recognized that I'm running for District 1 and to represent those folks. Right. But there's also four other people that I kind of know, but I have a really healthy respect for because I do listen to or go to all the meetings. So,
Gotcha. So what are the top issues that you see facing the county? I appreciate you sharing about the technological changes, the organizational structure changes that have happened, and how the dust is settling, post-COVID world, dust is settling, all of these things. What are some of the top issues that you see facing either District 1 or the county as a whole?
Well, there's so many things that are kind of interrelated to one another. Yeah. But at the end of the day, what we have is a county of people whose wages are suppressed. Okay. Right? So we make on average less money here than we do in other counties in California, and that impacts things like housing. That impacts how much maintenance they can do on their property from a fire mitigation perspective. Yeah. If you don't have the money to pay for your gas bill, it's really hard to run, to hire somebody to come and do the weed eating or to, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of things that are interrelated. And so, the primary issue I think is housing. Okay. Housing is by far the thing that is holding small businesses back, and also local governments back as well from a hiring perspective. There's a lot of people who want to live here, and there's not a lot of housing.
You had the Oak Fire, right? Which was 100. It was
127.
100 plus lost.
It was 127 formal homes, like permitted homes. Right. It was 215 people households were displaced.
Interesting.
There's a lot of people. I just described it as like informal tenancy. Sure. So living on a trailer on somebody's property in a shed or whatever. There were a lot more people displaced than just 127. But you bring up a good point, because we are currently building 55 new houses in Mariposa a year, but that's 4 years. That's 4
years for one fire, and we're rolling into what could be a rough fire season with the water, the snowpack being like 10 or 20%.
And that's on a cycle, right? Of however that works. And so we're currently building at a pace that's not even keeping up with what we're losing to natural disaster. Because remember, also in 2023, we lost some homes to flooding and to snow collapses and things like that. So we are losing houses basically at the same rate that we're building new houses. And then we have an environment that's not really necessarily been friendly towards building.
What about your thoughts about the increase of short-term rentals in homes and how that can impact the housing capacity?
Yeah, there was a study that was done that the county commissioned and paid for in 2024 about that. And so their study showed about 8% of our housing in Mariposa County is on the short-term market.
8%?
About 8%.
Did they have any info? I'm just super interested now. Did they have any information about like what the average was? I guess it's hard to say because like...
No, they did it. The study, and I would invite anybody, it's available on the county website to read through this thing. It's like 20, 30 pages. It'll take you a little while.
Sure.
But there's some really interesting findings, and it looks at different communities and what their average is. And then it also provides about 8 or 10 pages of recommendations that the county could be doing to help manage the short-term rental situation, particularly because we're a heavily impacted area. And District 1 is the most impacted area when it comes to visitor stays. Yeah, hospitality, short-term rentals, those kinds of things and there's a great desire to bring in glamping and all these other more non-traditional
I got to cut in and ask you.
Yeah.
I want to ask everybody, all three candidates, and I asked the first, and I'll ask you, what is your position on Terramore KOA?
Yeah, it's hard to have a position on something that hasn't gone through CEQA yet.
Yeah.
And so as a small business person, as a person who really respects people's property rights, like I didn't buy that property, and I also understand that CEQA and zoning are a process. Before I can really make a judgment on, I'm not even sure what it is. And I'd also say that was proposed more than 3 years ago. We're in a completely different economic environment. Who knows if that organization really is serious and moving forward? So there was a pre-application put in almost 4 years ago and no action since.
Okay.
And so in the developer world, like that could mean that they're just holding it and maybe they're going to find another developer that's going to do something else there. So I'm not really going to lock into something until I see what CEQA has to say.
That's fair.
I think that's super important. Because there's people in the community that are concerned about water, about fire, about... Fair enough. Yeah. They should be. Absolutely. If I lived close to that property, I'd be concerned too. But until we see what that report says, it's hard to really make a judgment. I think from a structural perspective, maybe not that location, but I think that there's a need and a desire in the community for more tourism related jobs.
Okay.
And so I think it's important that we are friendly towards the concept of saying, what are ways that we can bring in good paying jobs to this community? What are things during that planning process that we can get as guarantees? Like maybe they would fund a local fire station. Maybe they would, which is what happened up in Tenaya when they added their cabins, right? They were required to fund that fire station there. Could they provide a shuttle into town from Memorial Day to Labor Day so that those people that are staying there are brought into town that benefits local businesses?
Economically, yeah.
So I think that there's a big picture there from what I've seen so far. I'd probably be against it, but it doesn't, again, until we really get to the details, it's hard to say.
That's fair. Yeah, I might be jumping the gun with this question, but at least...
I think it's an important question. It's a question a lot of people in District 1, there's obviously been signs up for 4 years.
Yeah,
so,
even in my neighborhood. I'm not in District 1.
Yeah.
Very cool. So, sorry, I cut you off.
That's all right.
We were talking about the top issues.
Yeah.
Anything else that we wanted to...
I mean, so in our campaign, we've identified 7 priorities.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of those that we haven't touched on, but I think it's all overarching in this idea. And we both have a high school freshman, right?
Yes.
And maybe I know my high school freshman's talking about what do I have to do in order to come back here and live? Jackson loves Mariposa. He loves the livestock. He loves the agricultural lifestyle, all that stuff. He loves what we're doing on the farm. And he's asking himself, like, what career do I have to do in order to be able to afford to come back here?
That's fair.
And I think that's a question amongst a lot of kids in our community and young adults. Our 25-year-old, she couldn't find a way forward here in Mariposa and moved on. And I think that's the case for a lot of families as they're looking at the housing situation, the job opportunities, so on and so forth. So one of the things I really want to focus on as a member of the Board of Supervisors is how do we build a future for our kids? How do we diversify our economy? It's awesome. That same study talked about tourism brings into Mariposa County, I think it's like $364 million a year. Amazing.
Great.
But we're going to always run into years like we're running into right now, where there's things happening at the federal level that are negatively impacting tourism and there's things happening like the Wawona Hotel is closed, and that impacts the county directly because that TOT money, which I think was like $1 million a year, is not flowing into the county budget. There's those things that are always going to be there. So we have to be serious about diversifying, and we need to be really serious about trying to keep our kids here locally. And so there are like I've brought up the idea of like we need an actual campus of a trade school or community college here in Mariposa in the county, so that brings those dollars into the county, as opposed to like people go, oh, you can go to Merced for that. And that's true. But that means that those dollars that would otherwise go to Mariposa County for those, in California, we cover the first 2 years of community college. Those are going from a Mariposa County kid into Merced. I'd rather see those dollars stay here in Mariposa County, bring in those good paying jobs, those people that would teach at that community college or trade school, and actually train people to work the jobs that are necessary here. So that's part of it. The other thing being, I'd like to see us create an innovation hub built around the physical sciences. Mariposa and Yosemite, the world looks at us as the example of a place to come to enjoy physical sciences, whether it be geology, so on and so forth. Is it possible to partner with a private or public university to bring an innovation hub here where they could move their labs here, they're studying those things, and out of that could blossom new small businesses and so on and so forth. Places like the Tavis Corporation is a perfect example. They've been there for 50 years. They're producing parts that, just helped the Artemis 2 get to the moon and back.
Amazing. I should talk to them too.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Come talk to you guys.
So I think that's a perfect example of what we can create here. I met with them a couple weeks ago. They have about 50 full-time employees. They have great benefits. They pay really well. Most of those people are right out of Mariposa County High School that they trained on site, and they've had people that have worked there for 50 years and retired.
Here in the neighborhood. Here in the neighborhood, CKC Laboratories, right? They do, I think, electromagnetic testing, those types of things. So we want to see more of those types of industries. Am I hearing you correctly? We want to broaden our horizons beyond tourism, as important. We want to still focus on tourism, but we want to broaden it beyond.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you have a community that's over invested in one thing, that puts you at risk. So it's like on the one hand, I could
kind of like putting your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, so you could say like, in reality, tourism is always going to be the big industry. Just like when we lived in San Diego, tourism's the big industry. Like it is what it is.
I love going to San Diego.
Right, and yes, with Yosemite and Mariposa County, that's always going to, I mean, barring some horrible thing happening at the federal level, Mariposa County and Yosemite will continue to draw people. It's an infinitely renewable resource, tourism, right? But we're always also going to run into moments where diversifying your economy would benefit us. And so I think that figuring out ways, so like an example of like the Tavis Corporation is a great one. They're bringing big dollars into the community from the aerospace industry, right? That's not related to tourism. And that money goes into our economy and goes out through, all the ways that the payroll covers. And so the more we can diversify that, the better. That's all.
I like that. I mean, I also think that, and I mentioned this in my last interview, the advances of technology, broadband access. I know SierraTel is exploring some potential higher speed broadband access. Things like Starlink or satellite internet has been a game changer for a tech nerd like me to have super high speeds and afford those types of things. And I'm just curious if that mindset shift to the understanding of what's possible can get out there to attract other businesses to locate here or even start here.
Yeah, I mean, we have a farm stand that's open to the public, and so we get a mix of people, right? So mostly locals, but we run into tourists all the time, and they just stare, and you get to see them daydreaming, like, how could I create a life here? And I want to be able to look at them and say, hey, you run a small animation lab, move it here. You and your 5 employees, we have Starlink, we have high-speed internet.
SierraTel's doing their thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's a great opportunity to bring small businesses into the community and things like. So it's just having a little bit of a mindset of saying we really want to diversify a little bit. I also want to lean into tourism. I want to see more money come in to the county through tourism. I think there's a lot that could be developed here in a way that works with people and maintains our rural character and grows that sector. But at the same time, I think it's super important to like go through education, being like the trade school, community college, start attracting kids instead of losing kids and bringing those dollars with them. That's a whole new revenue stream for the community. And then this innovation hub would be a third one of those.
Do you think there's a saturation concern? Not to be disagreeable, because I too would love to see that. Yeah. Do you think that there's a saturation concern when it comes to like secondary education? Oakhurst is building their new state, I think it's State Center Community College District. Merced, do you think that would be...
Where do you want to live?
Well, you want to live in... fair. Yeah, that's fair.
No offense, I'm not running for District 5 in Madera County. I don't like going to Oakhurst. Oakhurst is not my favorite place in the world.
For my Oakhurst friends, cover your ears. I'm totally
and most of my Oakhurst friends love Mariposa.
Sure, yes.
Mariposa, again, is one of the jewels of the United States. And I think sometimes this is one of the benefits of not being from here, is sometimes when you're from here, you're so close to it, you don't have the new eyes that a new person has. And we understand that the world wants to come here. Right, and when you live here, you over time you might lose sight of how special this place really is, and how much desire is out there for people to come here and make a life, but also for people to stay here and make a life.
Right.
And so I want our high school to be in a place where it is producing graduates that continue to invest in the community for a lifetime.
That don't kind of leave, because that's what a lot of people. That's what I did. I left for a few years, came back. Yeah. That type of thing. We'd rather see. What can we do to keep them here?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I love it. I mean, isn't that what you want for your children? It's what I want for mine.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know what
I want to give them the choice.
I don't know what Sarah wants to do, but
of course, you want them to have choices.
Of course, I want her to have the choice and have that opportunity for sure. No, I appreciate that.
So those are values to me. Yeah.
So what then? A lot of big stuff here, like a lot of big, lofty, and that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
What does so you get? Let's say you are elected.
Yep.
For this is my bad, amateur 4 years.
It's a 4-year term.
4-year term, and potentially more if you want to keep going. Whatever.
There's currently no term limits.
Let's do this year for now. But you get elected. What does success look like to you when it comes to these areas? What does that look like?
Yeah, and so when we look through the priorities that we've created, it's all about creating new revenue for the county.
Okay.
So we're facing with two realities that I don't feel like we talked about enough.
Okay.
One is we have a declining population. We've gone from 18,000 to 17,500 down to 17,300 or something like that.
Okay.
So we're on a decline. And so everything that I'm proposing is about getting us back to a healthy size. How do we get to that 19 to 20,000 that would provide the tax bases that's necessary to provide the services that people want? Right? Everybody wants a good library. They want a function. They want better roads. All these things cost money, and to get there, you have to create more revenue.
Okay.
We can't just continue to depend on the state more and more. That flies in the face of everything that Mariposa County people are about. They want that independence. They want, we want to take care of our own. But in reality, what's happening with a declining population is more and more dependency on the state budget to fund the Mariposa County budget.
Interesting.
And so in order to reverse that trend, that's why we have to talk about being friendlier and more attractive to small businesses, both the ones that are here, helping them redevelop, helping them grow, helping them think about expansion, attracting new small businesses, getting housing built, because that housing is going to grow the tax basis, and that'll help rebound our population to a more healthy number, which is, I think, around 19 to 20,000, I think
it's probably a good
starting
magic
point.
number, you think? Okay.
For now. I mean, who knows?
So looking back, success to you would be we've brought in businesses, we've brought in revenue.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is dealing with problems.
Yeah.
So there are problems, like most people would agree that the short-term rental situation is a little bit out of control. Then we've got to find a happy medium between Madera County, which has zero regulations currently on short-term rentals. Yeah. Our family owns one in Madera County on Road 601, right by our house, but not in Mariposa County.
Cross that line, man.
It's right across the line. And when I contrast to my friends the process that we went through versus what they went through in Mariposa County, it's night and day. In Madera County, we made a phone call to the planning department. We said, this is a private property. We would like to get a TOT license. We paid I think it was $60 or $75, filled out a PDF and got it on Monday.
Okay.
In Mariposa County, that's often a 6 to 12 month process with multiple inspections and so on and so forth. So somewhere in the middle there is probably right on how do we regulate these? When you really dig into a lot of the ordinances and regulations around short-term rentals, they date back to a previous generation of short-term rentals. In the 90s, we had this thing like the B&B world where people were offering bed and breakfasts. And so a lot of our regulations are about that. And then they've kind of added on to as we've gotten to an Airbnb world. And so we've just kind of got some antiquated stuff that needs to be modernized. Again, that short-term rental study that we already paid for covers a lot of that and helps, clean that up. So there's structural things like that. Like, could we form an ad hoc committee to go through and fix the short-term rental ordinances so it's more favorable to both community members who are concerned about the volume of them by putting a cap on how many there can be, and dealing with the regulations so that we're not sending out a public works person to a 5-acre property to count parking spaces.
Interesting. Yeah.
There's things like that are just structurally
streamlining government.
Yes, exactly. Making it more efficient.
How do we reconcile that though? Because are we not earning tax revenue from the short terms?
Oh, I'm not knocking that industry at all. That not just as a tax revenue, but also a revenue for people.
Revenue, yeah, in general, yeah.
So that right now the TOT as a whole generates 19 to 21 million, depends a bit on the year, which is significant. Yeah. Particularly when you look at all the property taxes in Mariposa County generate 7 million.
Okay.
So it's a pretty big deal.
Good jump, yeah.
And so those properties are also paying property taxes, of course, but then an additional taxation on that. So it's a super important thing, but it's also like, I've already shared, we have a short-term rental. The only one making money on our short-term rental now is the cleaner. She's making more money than we are. Okay. Right?
Well,
that's a legitimate job.
Well, why is that?
Well, why is that? It's because the interest rates. When we bought in 2023,
I see. Yeah.
The interest rate that we got on an investment loan was 8.5%.
Gotcha.
So it's not exactly
a
good deal.
That's fair.
But so right now we're just happy to break even on from a investment perspective.
Fair.
But literally the only person making money on our short-term rental right now is the cleaner.
I always see on like the social media pages, someo's like looking for a cleaner for my short-term rental, and there's like 50 comments in there, like in an hour.
And when you find a good one, you
everywhere.
keep them. And
I'm sure.
There's a lot of ancillary businesses that are supported by both the hotel industry, but also the short-term rental. There's people who just do laundry. There's people who, those are all legitimate jobs. Yeah. The cleaning services, so on and so forth. The handyman that are on call 24 hours a day. Those are providing jobs, and so we have to consider that as we consider, how do we control the volume of that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
No, that's fair. What's your thoughts on the? This was probably the last call, the last interview. So I want to ask you as well. What are your thoughts on the Yosemite reservation system being nixed this year?
Look, I'm a small business person, and I think that anything that thwarts small business locally is a bad thing. So I'm in favor of not having a reservation system. I think it's better for small businesses. I think we have a symbiotic relationship there.
Yeah.
And I think that there was, just my opinion, is there was a group of people in that park administration who were doing studies to kind of prove that they needed the reservation system. And I think
kind
we all acknowledge it became a little bit of
thing?
that's just my opinion. And I think that they used the COVID shutdown as a way to force that through. I think that idea had been out there.
Gotcha.
At the same time, I think there's some legitimate things that within the park are super important to take care of. It's interesting to me that it was presented as the only solution to the parking problem is to limit people coming in the park. I think that from an access perspective, adding additional parking in the park is not that crazy of a thought. The valley has been built and rebuilt, unfortunately, so many times over the last 150 to 200 years. Yeah. The idea of, could we do an underground parking? Could we do a parking in Wawona by the golf course? Make that a transit center. So, just like when you go to the east side and you go to Devil's Postpile and things like that, you have to park, and then there's a shuttle situation.
Yeah. Zion going up.
Yeah, exactly. Like why aren't there, when there's surges, say, when it's really busy in the summer, you have to park off site somewhere and take a shuttle in. I think that's totally a reasonable way. Just from a public access perspective, the parks are, what they call America's greatest invention.
Yeah.
Right. And so we want those people coming to the park. We want them to enjoy the park. From a county perspective, and as a small business owner myself, I want to see people add a day to experience Mariposa, get to know and appreciate that spot. We currently still own, but we haven't been there in 4 years, a property in Estes Park, Colorado, a vacation property.
Yeah.
And that is a community that's really embraced their symbiotic relationship with being a gateway community.
Gotcha.
And they've realized, hey, we have a very busy tourist season, but that very busy tourist season is why we have a great hospital, why we have great schools, why we have a great downtown. They've made legitimate concessions to those community members. Like they have, in the summertime, they have resident-only parking in certain places in town, which is dope. That allows you to go in and enjoy what's going on in town.
Sure.
They have all sorts of little concessions. They also have locals-only housing. So in order to buy in certain communities, you have to have a job in town and certify that you have a job in town. I think there's things like that we can look at that are ways to help people understand that there's nothing wrong with being a destination.
Right.
And I think that's part of when we talk about the rub, right? And so I'm in agriculture. I hang out with people who have cows and grow vegetables. And there's definitely within Mariposa a definition of ourselves as an agricultural community. But there's also no reason that in any way competes with the idea of that, hey, we also have this amazing natural resource
Paradise.
where millions
Right
of
there.
people want to come, that's
Yeah.
right there, that we can enjoy, that hopefully our kids and grandkids can enjoy.
And that we can support people to come enjoy. Is that what I'm
Yeah,
hearing you say? Right?
exactly. Yeah,
So providing those opportunities to...
Yeah. Doesn't mean we become a slave to tourism. That's not what I'm saying at all.
Fair.
What I'm saying is there's nothing wrong with being hospitable,
Yeah.
good neighbors, and welcoming people, making our fair share of the profits as well. That $364 million I talked about, most of that's going out of town to corporations like Aramark, right? And they're just putting that right into Wall Street. So how do we, as a community, how do we think about ways where we can get our own, right? There's no reason that somebody couldn't go get a contract from the U.S. Forest Service to offer horseback riding
Oh man, could you imagine a locally owned concessionaire?
Right, exactly. I mean, there's so many things that are possible. Like, I mentioned,
Somebody write that down. Somebody do that.
steal that idea.
Put that in there.
Yeah, I mean,
because I'm not doing it.
There's,
I don't know if you're doing it.
there has been a ziplining thing here. I'd love to
Yeah.
see that back.
Yeah, I did that a couple years ago.
Alpine slides are really cool. I don't know if you've ever seen that. It's where you sit on a little toboggan and you go down the mountain.
Yeah.
Be a perfect little foothills business. There's so many things that we can add in the community that would create like real good paying jobs, but also not destroy the rural character. Might, as we are investing more and more in things like agritourism, where people could really come and learn about, Mariposa and its proud history. I don't think that those two things are necessarily antithetical. I think that they can really coexist well.
That's fair. Excellent. Thank you. Thank
Cool.
you. I have two specific questions.
Sure.
Well, I have one for that I'm asking everyone. I have one specifically for you.
Yeah.
And the first one I want to talk about is kind of just our national politics.
Yes.
Hold on with me for a minute. I promise I won't go there too much. But what I will say is that in the current environment that we have, people are often viewing local leadership positions like the one you're
Yep.
running for with that national political lens.
Yep.
And by that I mean they might be like, oh, this person is on this side of the aisle and therefore I don't want to vote for them, or this person is on my side of the aisle, so even if the other person's got things that might more align with, I'm still gonna vote
Yep.
that way. What would you say to voters who are exploring this District 1 race
Absolutely.
and they may not share your broader political views? I'm not asking you to share them. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
But they may not share those. Why should they still consider voting for you as a District 1 supervisor?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all neighbors. And so District 1 is 3,500 people. I tell Jackson all the time on the way to school, as a dad, you have to offer reminders. Don't be an a-hole. There's no room to be an a-hole in a small town of 18,000 people, right?
Well, especially you can't like cut someone off in a car because they're
Right.
like, oh, I know that's
Exactly.
that's
Now
Adam's
they're not
truck.
gonna buy
That's
my
Adam's-
vegetables.
That's Adam's farm van. Like I know, right?
And so I think what's cool about this community, and again, something about coming from a place like San Diego, where every single public office is held by a Democrat for the most part.
Sure.
Even at the county level, I think for the vast majority of them are Democrats, right? And there becomes this group think mentality that happens in that space
Bubble.
where you're either a Democrat or you're stupid. That's
Okay.
pretty much what we came out of.
Sure.
What we love about Mariposa is because it's not 50-50, it's more like 40-40-20, right? There's 20% of
Fair.
no party people like myself,
Sure.
40% on those other parties. That creates a dialogue that doesn't exist anywhere. And that's really special in Mariposa County. And so I love that. I have neighbors, again, we're city people. We moved here, right? One of the things I didn't understand was Second Amendment things.
Sure.
When you live in the city,
Well, especially in California. It's
Yeah.
not in California City.
if we lived in urban San Diego for 15 years where guns equal bad,
Right.
right? And so my neighbors would be target shooting and I'd be like, bro, like
What's going on
what's
here?
going on here?
Right.
Because that was our mentality. Coming here and having to realize like, actually, that's not a problem. Guns don't equal bad. Guns, in his opinion, equal self-protection,
Self-protection,
equal preservation, hunting,
hobby.
things like that.
Yeah.
So that's been a growth opportunity for us to say, oh, all those things that we previously necessarily didn't understand because we weren't around those people, now we have to understand, right? And then also coming out of the Christian world where, I don't know how much you know about the history of evangelicalism, but starting at about year 2000 has taken a very hard right turn into politics.
Yeah.
That was not there.
You're saying that there's a blurred line. Between,
Yeah, and so
Okay.
previous to about year 2000, evangelicalism was pretty politically neutral, so you would meet Democrats and Republicans at church and so on and so forth. That in a lot of evangelical circles, that is not necessarily the case anymore. It has been shifted further and further and further to the right in an uncomfortable way for some people, like myself, I'm a very centrist person.
Sure.
It's for people that are considering, who to vote for.
Yeah.
I look at the role of the Board of Supervisors is distinctly nonpartisan, and judge us on what we do. Right? So if my job is to listen to the community, to be a voice for them, look at what I actually do in my daily life, look at how I treat people. I think that's at the end of the day what we're talking about. The role of a member of Board of Supervisors, again, in my opinion, is to cast vision and leadership for the county staff specifically, but also to get things done for the constituents.
Gotcha.
And so that's what I would be asked to be measured on, is not just on, hey, I don't agree with him on this issue.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Whatever it is.
Yeah,
and you're not. To be clear, I haven't seen any of the candidates necessarily go out of the way to share their national political perspectives. I don't know if they do or not. I don't really care.
Right.
I'm just interested. My fear and my concern. This is what I'll say to the audience and to you as well, is that I think that we should be looking beyond that lens. I think that's a very simple way of looking at things.
Yeah.
I think people's perspectives change. I appreciate your example of the Second Amendment type stuff.
Right.
That people, that position being changed after just
we
experiencing different things.
Just so everybody's
watch out.
No, I'm just saying. We went from people who are no gun to now we have.
Well, there you go. There you go.
So,
but I just hope that people can look beyond that and actually consider the again. I'm not a District 1 guy.
Sure.
Not a District 1. Not endorsing, but considering the positions, the focuses, the goals, the priorities that you have, that the candidates all have, and vote for that, regardless of if you saw them at a rally or you saw them that you knew that they voted for. I don't care. That's personal.
One way or the other, there's diversity on that board. Those 5 people that are sitting on that board of supervisors don't agree on everything.
Is that not a good thing?
That is a great thing.
Right.
And again, coming from a community where in San Diego it was 801, so 8 Democrats, 0 Republicans, and 1 independent running city council with a Democratic mayor, there were never discussions. There was no debate to be had. Why? Because they had the votes. They could make decisions basically behind closed doors. The community wasn't really involved in that process. Damned to the Brown Act. It was what it was.
And we don't want that.
We don't want that.
We want a diverse.
What I love about it, and because again, to contrast our life in San Diego, I was on local planning groups. I went to the planning commission. I would oftentimes be the only non-paid member of the public at that event, where there may be 50 people in the audience, but all of them are developers or people that have a paid interest in being there. In Mariposa County, you go to I went to the fish camp planning group meeting, and there were 35 people on a Saturday morning. That's amazing. That's great. Amazing. And we want to make sure that we build that up, and because that's the kind of community involvement that we depend on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My second question for you, that's more personal for you, is I think out of the candidates, in fact, I know out of the candidates, you, of course, are the person who's lived in this community the least.
Sure.
And one could argue that could be a good thing. One could argue that could be a bad thing. What would your response to be to someone say, oh, you haven't been here long enough? I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fair criticism. I think at the same time, you can look at what I've done in the 4 years that I've been here and judge that if that's the momentum, we want to continue that momentum. I'd be fair putting the 4 years of accomplishments both in our small business and our private lives, and what we did with the Oak Fire victims on par with. I'd be fine to have that comparison.
Sure, yeah.
I think that it's, this county spends a lot of money on consultants trying to get an outside view. And to have somebody on the board that has done consulting with organizations, and so has that ability and that skill set, but also can bring some of that outside perspective, that's a super important thing. Another thing is, I don't have all the vested interests of 40 years of relationships. I can make a decision with a clear mind, knowing that it might negatively impact somebody that maybe I know, but my kids didn't go to prom with their kids. Right. And so that's both a positive thing for them in that they have those relationships, and a liability, right? Because we carry all of that with us, and in our decision making, whether we want to acknowledge that or not, we might go to church with that person, or we might whatever. Yeah. So if I don't have all of those entanglements necessarily, it allows me to be a little bit more independent minded in my thinking, and even to ask questions that might, because I don't have all those relationships, maybe I could be the one to ask the questions from the dais that another Board of Supervisor member has, but isn't willing to ask because it might hurt somebody's feelings. They might have a relationship with them. Yeah. So there's positives and negatives, and I respect those who say that that I haven't lived here.
I haven't heard that specifically.
It's been posted online here and there, and that's fine. And that's fine. Again, to qualify for the ballot, you need to live in the community. I think for it's like 30 days. So I'm well past that.
Oh yeah. Well,
Also, there's currently a member of the Board of Supervisors who established residency right around the time I established residency. So
fair. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So judge you on your accomplishments and your actions.
That's all we can ask.
Fair. One of the last questions I have for you is just understand there is competing priorities. You talked about a lot. You talked about housing. You touched on the park. You talked about fair jobs. You talked about all these different things, business supporting small businesses. What's your approach when it comes to seeking compromise with your counterparts, either on the board or even with your constituents who might be like, I think you should vote yes on this thing, and you feel it's better to vote no, whatever the thing is. What's your approach to compromise when not everyone's going to be able to get what they want?
That's what politics is. And I think in the last, if you want to talk about from a national perspective, that's how we've gotten to where we've gotten, is that the idea of compromise at the national level has become like an anathema. Like people are afraid to.
It's too polarized.
Yeah, it's so polarized. It's like it's team A versus team B, and screw team B, I'm on team A. That doesn't happen on the local level. Honestly, they have to be much more cordial. I have a long history of getting along with people, working in organizations and whatnot. And so, I just think it's important to not always focus on winning the moment, but winning the war, right?
Okay.
And so, like, again, if we can agree on that's the idea of vision and leadership, is that we could stack hands and say, we want to create a future for our kids that they can thrive in. That'll help us filter those decisions. Not afraid to make a decision that will make some people mad. I think that comes from experience and being leadership. Sometimes as a leader, you have to do things in order to move things forward or to advance towards a greater goal. And I can give a specific example of that. When I led the Rolando Community Council down in San Diego, as it became in charge of their street fair. So it was a one-day street fair, had 15, 20,000 people come to it. It had gone through a long series of decline when I took it over, where the county or the community was supporting it at about $15,000 in loss a year to have this event. And so I took it over and said, that doesn't work for me. Let's restructure it, and so on and so forth. And it caused a lot of bad feelings in that process, because it was stepping on some sacred cows. Like, this person was always hired to bring in the carnivals. This person always picked the bands, so on and so forth. They didn't have beer, things like that. And so when we started looking at those things, it was like, the greater vision that we have for this event is that it makes money so we can give money away in the community, and that more people come.
Gotcha.
And so we were hearing from community residents, I don't go because the carnival's there. And just to go there with my children cost me $100 for 15 minutes of fun, and I won't go to it.
Right.
And so fixing those kinds of problems in a practical way was like, what we saw was a few minutes of tears, right?
Yeah.
When you made those hard decisions and people were upset and they went and said nasty things about me on Facebook. But then you judge me by a year out, when we've made those changes, and now the event is growing again, and we went from losing $15,000 to making $25,000 in 1 year of that kind of a transition. So sometimes it does take, I've told people flat out, if you elect me, I'm not a status quo person. I'm interested in advancing Mariposa to get us on a more healthy budget perspective, but also on a growth that's a reasonable growth and gets us more towards that 19, 20,000. And there probably will be tears along the way.
Sure.
Because we're going to have to make hard decisions. We're going to have to confront old habits, and we're going to have to move forward.
Gotcha.
And so, but I think that's what leadership is taking people. My definition of leadership is taking people taking people somewhere that they would not otherwise go alone.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So that's what I see a leader does. Like, we can't do these things on our own without a form of leadership.
Got it. Well put. One last question. This is the question that I ask everybody in all of my podcasts. What is the one thing you love most about living here in Mariposa County?
Oh, man. I mean, some of it is the simple things. When I was driving on Triangle Road to your house, I just saw a bobcat.
Did you?
I love when I'm driving around, or I'm in my yard, or I'm working on one of these farm properties somewhere, seeing the coolest thing. I saw a ringtail one day driving Jackson to school. It ran across the road in front of me. I almost hit it. And I was like, what was that? And it stopped me. I was like, I've never seen one of those.
Sure.
I love those moments. Those are things that are so unique to living in a rural part of the country, but also living in somewhere that's like, with a lot of biodiversity. And those are the things that stop me. I'll be on a walk, out working with the goats, and I'll be fascinated by a native plant that I've never seen before, and I'll go on iNaturalist and look it up and those kinds of things. That kind of stuff is, it's funny because a lot of times locals will say, like, they'll look at us like, you moved here from San Diego, and they'll look at us like we're crazy, because in their minds that's like a paradise.
Yeah.
But to us, we see it the other way around. We liked living in San Diego just fine. It was a beautiful place to live. We grew tired of it, but we are utterly fascinated with all of this biodiversity and wildlife and the community and all that stuff here. So that's the stuff that still stops me.
I love it. Anything else you want to share with the audience? Website or
check out the website
events or anything like that?
It's electfarmeradam.com. And you can see the priorities. You can also schedule a one-on-one phone call with me. You can set up, it has access to my calendar, schedule a 15-minute phone call. You can have a house party, whatever it is. Reach out to me. I'm trying to be as transparent as possible. Somebody last night stopped me at the forum and asked me about my personal finances.
Interesting.
I'm like, that's fine. I'll answer those questions. I'm running to represent
I do not want to get into talk about tax returns again.
Anyways, I'm trying to be as transparent as possible. You have questions. I know maybe I'm new to some people, and that's okay. Just know that I'm a transparent person, and I'm happy to answer any questions people have.
Well, Adam,
Awesome.
I appreciate you taking the time to sit down and share your perspective. This has been fantastic. Thank you to everyone who's listening. Again, this is our series where we're interviewing all the District 1 candidates, asking the same set of questions, helping you all get a more consistent, nuanced, kind of longer form look at each candidate is the goal. We're going to drop them regularly here as often as I am able. I always tell people I got that day job. I love my day job. I'm not saying that in a bad way, but
100%.
it's time and schedules. And so as these get scheduled and get out there, we will post them on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts under the name Behind the Fence. If you found this helpful, please feel free to follow. You can follow it on all the platforms. You can share it with someone who loves this community as much as I do. Stick around on social media, on Facebook or Instagram for any updates between episodes. And with that being said, thank you for joining, and we will see you next time.
Right on.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right.